Good evening. Welcome to ACT UP Live. This is a live call-in show for the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. My name is Tony Arena. We are live tonight. We are taking your calls. The number is 388-0745. And tonight my guest is Maxine Wolfe.
Hi.
And our topic is civil disobedience. So Maxine, tell me, what was your first civil disobedience with ACT UP?
Well, actually, it was at the Wall Street 2 action, which was an action that was in March of 1988. Was it March of 1988? Yeah, that was well, actually, it wasn't the first civil disobedience. It was the first planned CD civil disobedience where people were forming groups, who were willing to risk arrest.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had done an action before then. The Women's Caucus had done an action against Cosmo magazine where we actually, what you could say is broke laws, but
what was the reason behind the action?
The Wall Street action?
Yeah.
Was again to bring attention to the fact that there were profits being made off of drugs and people were not getting access to them, and the prices, at that time the price of AZT was astronomical, and Burroughs Wellcome was doing nothing about lowering it.
And for our viewers who might not know, what exactly is the definition of civil disobedience?
Well, it's a pretty broad-ranging definition, but it basically means that what the word says, civil disobedience, you disobey some law that someone has set up, or you do something that could be considered illegal. For example, like blocking traffic, or trespassing, going into private property that you're not allowed to be on. Like if you go into the offices of a drug company, it's a private property situation. So if you go in there to state your case or to confront people about what they are or are not doing, then technically they have a right to tell you to leave, and you should leave legally.
And if you don't?
If you don't, then you're breaking the law. You are trespassing.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a whole range of laws. I mean, civil disobedience can go way beyond that,
But why would this be an effective tool in fighting AIDS?
Well, I don't think that, I think that civil disobedience is one kind of strategy, and not every form of what you would call direct action is something that places you in a situation where you might be breaking a law. So you decide whether it's a reasonable strategy to use depending on what point you want to make. At Wall Street, the point that we wanted to make was that business should not go on as usual. And so the idea there was to stop Wall Street.
And what did you do that would constitute civil disobedience?
Well, what we did that particular time was that there were waves of people that kept blocking traffic and literally brought that whole area to a standstill and brought media attention to the fact that there were people who were willing to risk arrest to make the point of drug profiteering and the inaccessibility of drugs and the non-development of drugs. And the fact that at that time, I remember we had a sign, AZT was selling for something like $20,000 a year, and like the average salary of a woman was something like $7,000 a year. So, the idea that you couldn't, if you were a woman with AIDS, you would have no access to this treatment. Mm-hmm. And I think that civil disobedience, certain kinds of civil disobedience are very effective for bringing attention to the issue, as well as for letting the people that you're speaking to know that you're willing to go to those lengths to have your demands met. And I think that one of the good ways that ACT UP has used civil disobedience has been usually to give people the opportunity to speak to us before we do civil disobedience. So it's not as if you just go shouting at anybody anytime you want to shout at them. Generally, we've been fairly rational with people until they refuse to pay any attention to us. And when you are a moneyed corporate organization, you can put ads in the media extolling the virtues of your company, your corporate image, what you are doing. When you are a grassroots organization, you cannot possibly compete financially So you have to do it with numbers and with the kinds of actions that you do, because that's the only way that you're going to get space in the media.
We have a caller by the name of Phil. Phil, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, is this show for big fat penises?
Thanks, Phil. It was a crank call, which we
Okay.
sometimes get, you know. Okay, so we were talking about civil disobedience and
Right.
how it might be used. Now, there are people who have said that that ACT UP's, you know, pushes the boundaries too far. That we ask for too much, and that the civil disobedience is too much of leaning towards extremism. Now, do you think that these kind of criticisms come from like an uneducated point of view, or are they like valid criticisms?
Well, I mean, I think that, again, I don't want to confuse just direct action with civil disobedience. We do lots of things that people don't like that are not civil disobedience. But this country, other than being founded on the exploitation of Native Americans, was created by an act of civil disobedience. You know, it has a long and very proud history in this country in gaining people a whole range of rights that they should have been entitled to in the first place, and has a long history in the labor movement and the civil rights, black civil rights movement, and the women's movement, the suffrage movement. It's used all over the world, and it's not sort of a marginal tactic, in fact. So I don't think, you know, when people say that you're going to extremes, it's not like I want to be doing this. You know, I would like the AIDS crisis to be over. I would like everyone to live. I would like drug companies to act responsibly. I would like the government to act responsibly. I will try to be as rational as possible to get that to happen. Okay?
We have a caller by the name of Dennis. Dennis, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Even on the simplest treatment, taking care of me, I have AIDS. Just going to the hospital, no matter what you try to do in a large way with drug companies, just to try to go to the hospital to be seen is you're treated sort of like cattle. No respect. You can't show any kind of objection of your treatment at St. Vincent Hospital. If you show any objection, you're put aside, and they tell you go home. They make an appointment for 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're only open till 5. If you express that you're concerned over your health at St. Vincent's, and you show you're intelligent, you show you're concerned, you're shunned. The attention is given to people that the illness is affected to them to the degree they don't care. They just go there. They just go there like zombies. But I happen to be ill for many years and still have my brains. But once you show that, there is not only me with brains, there's so many few other people. And they're forced to get very violent. They're forced to get angry. A couple of times the police in St. Vincent's tell me to go. Social worker never calls me back. AIDS services never call me back. If I didn't use my brains, but you see, this is the second time I face eviction. I live in the village 22 years. And this is the second time I dealt with it, and I accomplished. But I notice I'm getting sicker because I realized that if I don't use my brains, I'm going to wind up in a one-room occupancy.
Well,
I know. What I'm trying to find out when ACT UP is that you try to get drugs, but even the basic things, things they're not there.
Well, let me just tell you that we did actually do a couple of actions at St. Vincent's some years ago for exactly that reason. Because, in fact, it was a woman PWA who had gone in there, and her lover wanted to go with her, and they pushed her around, and we ended up doing several direct actions there, and then negotiated with them about doing certain kinds of trainings with their staff, so they may need it again. But I think that's, another place where you can use direct actions are for basic services. I mean, ACT UP has done, just 2 weeks ago, there were people who were arrested protesting the housing policies of the Giuliani administration and the issues around housing for people with AIDS. So it's been used in AIDS, you know, on issues with AIDS on almost every kind of issue. And it has worked. I mean, the best, you know, again, making a distinction between civil disobedience, in which case you are clearly know that you're doing something, you know, that could get you arrested, versus direct action, which is doing an action that is not necessarily something you could get arrested for, but is directly approaching or affecting the people you want to reach. So there's a difference between the two. But the best argument for direct action is that it works. And it has worked for lots of different movements and, for, you know, to gain lots of different ends. But I just want to say one thing, which is that when you talk about the first CD action, I'm not a person who believes in cavalierly getting arrested. I think there are a lot of people in jail who never wanted to be there in the first place, and I think it's kind of cavalier to want to be in jail. So when I do civil disobedience trainings, I talk about being willing to risk arrest as opposed to wanting to be arrested. And frankly, I never want to be arrested. I would rather do what I want to do and get away with it and still have the impact. But there are just times when you have to be willing to risk arrest. And I also want to say that a lot of those times are created by the law enforcement authorities. That is, like, for example, sometimes policemen will come over to you when you are doing something that's legal, like handing out leaflets. There were people in ACT UP that were arrested handing out leaflets in front of Gracie Mansion when Giuliani was holding a reception there a couple of months ago.
Handing out
yeah,
leaflets.
told that they couldn't hand out leaflets. This is your constitutional right. Okay, but then the police, because of their power, can redefine it as a demonstration, which is what they attempted to do, and then threaten you with arrest. And that's happened to me several times, where I've been doing things that, as a citizen, I am totally allowed to do.
We have another caller, Elliot. Elliot, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I wanted to say bravo to you both and to all of the members of ACT UP. I think that the national disgrace we have here is, for example, the moment of a country obsessed with O.J. Simpson, with all the brutal details of this kind of violence, guilty or not, notwithstanding. And when I see ACT UP people out there in the street marching and protesting and demonstrating in order to get rights that everybody else has, it's just uplifting. And I fight constantly. I'm a little too old to lay down in the streets, and I try and help in other ways that I'm able to. I wish I were 22 and could do it, but it is a necessary and courageous and brave thing that ACT UP is doing, and not to be discouraged by the kind of people who are so comfortable sitting high on in their condos and saying, oh, it's a disgrace, they're outrageous, they're too loud, they're too vulgar. I mean, you know, nothing gets done unless it's ACT UP. And I say bravo to Larry Kramer, too, for his speaking out. Whether you agree with him or don't agree with him, the man speaks out for rights and dignity and what people are entitled to. So, well, you people are courageous. You don't need my bravo, but I just wanted to add it.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
very much.
That's a very
Yeah.
appreciated comment. Larry Kramer, for those of you who might not know, co-founded or sparked the creation of ACT UP and is a playwright. Our next caller is Ron. Ron, are you there? Ron's not there. Margot, are you there? Margot?
Yes, hello?
Hi, you're on the air. Can you have a question?
Well, not really a question. I have a comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I really commend ACT UP, the organization, for the members' courage to stand up for what's right. Unfortunately, in our society, people sometimes don't realize that in order for you to get some sort of power to get AIDS, to get help for people with AIDS, or to get people to understand what other people's living situations are, that you have to protest. I mean, that's how blacks in this country have gotten where they've gotten. Sometimes I wonder if we really have come that far. It seems like things are going backwards sometimes. But as a black female, I think that it's very important that we all stand up for what's right in the society, and what's right is to be able to accept other people, irregardless of what illness they have, or if they're heterosexuals or homosexuals or whatever. And I really commend you for the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, our next caller's name is Candy. Candy, are you there? Candy is, yeah. Okay. Well, it's definitely very heartening to hear these kinds of calls. Not the crank calls, but the calls that appreciate the work that we've been doing.
Right.
You
I
know.
think that, that the other thing that people have to know about, I think everyone always sees ACT UP out on the streets and doesn't understand like how much work goes into creating an action that, with a particular purpose. Not just work to organize the action, but work that's about finding out what the issues are that you should be doing actions about, and how much research people do, and how one of the reasons why I think that we've been effective has been not just because we've been willing to be out on the street, but because we've had the information to give out to people. We don't pass out lies. Mm-hmm. We don't make up stories. No one has to make up stories in this pandemic. We basically find out what some organization or institution is doing or not doing, and figure out a way that we can get that information out to other people and pressure that organization, whether it's the Congress or the National Institutes of Health or an individual hospital, on every layer to do something.
Our next call is from Cliff.
Hello. First of all, I want to say to Maxine, I'm the man who stopped you about one evening. You were with two other women on Lexington Avenue. I don't know if you remember.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So I want to, again, congratulate you like I did before. But I do have a comment to make. ACT UP #1 is my first place of donation. Whenever I send in a donation for anything related to AIDS, it goes to ACT UP. But the comment that I want to make is that I don't understand why more has not been made of the government's responsibility with AIDS. I believe that AIDS is a government-designed disease. And I mean, you take a man like Jesse Helms. I am sure if he were approached and told that we have something that's going to kill all the quote unquote undesirables, like gay people and Hispanics and blacks, etc., and drug addicts, I'm sure he would say go ahead and use it. Ditto Pat Robertson and all the rest. And what I'm using as fuel or a reasoning is you look at the Tuskegee Institute experiments. You look at the recent experiments that were done with nuclear with this nuclear thing that just came out recently. I mean, there's so much hidden that the government has done, and yet it's coming out, and yet the people are still sleeping. I mean, Middle America is still sleeping and will not look at this for what it is. I mean, this is really this is genocide. It reminds me of during before Hitler came into power, the Jews were told that there's somebody who's coming into power who's going to kill all of you, and it was so preposterous that they didn't believe it, and it did happen. And I mean, the idea, even I said to myself, do you really believe that AIDS is a man-made thing? Wake up, think about it. And I certainly believe that there are a lot of people like me out there who believe it too. and it's just hard to get the fact over that this could very easily be, the right, the Christian right, or whatever you want to call it. It could easily be given to us by them, and I mean, it's just, it's something really to look at, and I don't know where else to take it. I feel I've spoken enough.
Maxine, any comment?
Well, I would just say that actually Bob Lederer, quite a number of years ago, wrote an article, he's in ACT UP, looking at various ideas about the potential, the idea that AIDS could have been some chemical kind of warfare, and I think you should look at it. I can't remember now exactly it was in a publication called Covert Action, and it was done in like 1989 or something. But I think that at this point, while it would be someday we will know what the story is about this, at this point, I personally am more concerned with saving the lives of people who are sick already, and also making sure no one else gets sick, and using the tactics of ACT UP to make sure that people are taken care of, as opposed to simply exposing where it came from.
Our next caller is Spence. Spence, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Maxine, I have a question.
Did we lose you? Okay, call back, Spence. We accidentally lost you. Okay, while we're waiting for Spence to call back.
Yeah.
The previous caller brought up a point about people in the right wing actively, working against AIDS and whatnot. Do you think these people are unreachable, uneducational? Oh, Spence is back. Spence, you there?
Yeah, hi.
Okay, your question?
This is my question. I'm very upset about the lack of education in the school system, and the fact that the young people aren't getting the information they need to prevent themselves from being infected. And I heard a very, very sad story today. A friend of mine is a mother who has a young teenage daughter in the public school system. The daughter is maybe 13 years old, and mother recently discovered that the daughter is sexually active, and in fact was able to access an abortion, and is able to access certain kinds of birth control and what have you, which I think is fine. But the problem that I see is, are we being responsible, and are like Planned Parenthood, et cetera, being responsible when they help a young woman avoid pregnancy with sort of the pill and other kinds of things that do not prevent AIDS transmission? I mean, I just said to this friend of mine, I said to her, she's so upset about her daughter getting pregnant, and I said to her, I'm very worried about your daughter getting HIV. Now, am I thinking about this correctly? I mean,
I think you're absolutely correct when you say that this is totally irresponsible. The fact of the matter is, perhaps they just don't think of AIDS as something. Often people say things like, "Oh, I never thought it would happen to me." They just think of it as something that other people get. And even discovering, like this woman did, that her daughter was sexually active, AIDS seemed to never even enter into her mind as a possibility. But it is a very real possibility.
Well, I think that one of the biggest issues here is that women don't use condoms, men do. And that was sort of the focus of our first action about women in ACT UP, which is that all the advertising was about, women taking condoms with them. And it's one thing, especially at young ages, there is absolutely no support for women to negotiate that with young men if they're having heterosexual sexual relationships. And so it's more than simply having the availability of condoms. I mean, there has to be some way in which we go back to a lot of the premises of the women's liberation movement about, giving young women support for being able to control their own sexual lives, and also holding young men responsible for carrying the condoms with them. You know, we have very short memories in this country, but I grew up in the 50s, and in the 50s, the men were supposed to carry the condoms.
But remember, you know, the condom is also a protection for the man as well.
Yes, absolutely, but I'm just saying in terms of heterosexual relationships, we think it's like, you know, we've gotten to the point where in heterosexual relationships, most of the men don't think that they have to be responsible for birth control.
Okay.
And they're not educated to do it. So a barrier method like condoms is going to be something that they should also be taught to take responsibility.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time, but we do have a lot of calls. Let's see if we can get to all of them. Sam, you're next.
Yes, hello.
Maybe last
Hi,
question
Sam.
about direct action.
Pardon me. I just want to applaud you, all of you, who are members of ACT UP. I want you to know that I think you're courageous and heroic. And in your struggles, I hope that you promote our being gay and lesbian as being natural and healthy and fulfilling. And I thank you all very much for what you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul is next. Paul?
Hi, this is Paul. How are you?
Hiya, Paul.
Hi.
I noticed that the gay games ACT UP marched with NAMBLA, and it was very disturbing to see that. I just want to know your-
Okay. Well, listen, Paul, you know, the fact of the matter is ACT UP didn't march with NAMBLA. We held a march, and anyone who wanted to march could march. And NAMBLA just happened to come. You know, there is really no connection between us and them in any way. All right, who's next? Ron is next. Hello, Ron.
Hi. I want to continue the gratitude. I just wanted to thank you guys and ladies very much, because I personally only came out to my family about a month ago. I've been out to everyone else but my family. And ACT UP and my friends in ACT UP and everything that ACT UP has done helped me to have the strength and the support to go forward and do that. I also wanted to thank you for everything that you guys have done. You not only carried the torch, but lit the torch in the fight against AIDS and expanding awareness. I wanted to also ask people who are listening to, you know, not to forget to support with money, because everything costs, and a lot of people love the fact that there are people in this world who are very strong and can take leadership. But if you're not strong enough to participate as a leader, then you have to, as a gay person or anyone who cares about gay and lesbian issues, you have to support with dollars, too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron, we have another Ron on the line. Ron, are you there?
Hi.
Do you have a question about direct action?
Right. Well, I just wanted to say that really wanted to commend ACT UP and the rest of the AIDS organizations and individuals who helped beat back the attempts of that bully Giuliani to get rid of DAS, the Department of AIDS Services.
Right.
And I mean, everybody worked hard on that and showed again that civil disobedience and threats of it and demonstrations do work. I'd like to know what's coming up in the future and how people can get involved.
We'd like,
Well,
quick, we have 30
I'll
seconds.
tell you very quickly that we have a bill in Congress called the AIDS Cure Act, which is to set up a project to find a cure for AIDS. That's one thing that people can get involved in by calling your congresspeople and urging them to sponsor it or support it. And we will be doing some actions about that.
Okay, thank you very much. This is us. ACT UP.